Good evening, everybody. Again, thank you for spending what probably will be 75 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes with us during your summer. We appreciate that. This is meeting number 4. We have approximately 1,000 parents that we'll be meeting with, either we've met with already, or between this meeting and the next 2 tomorrow as well. We have a lot to get through over the next 75 minutes. We have some slides to show you. Every slide was basically designed and developed using your own questions because we wanted to make sure that we got through as many of your questions as we possibly could. We will have 3 separate times where you can use the raise your hand function through Zoom in order to ask some questions. But again, most of the evening will be focused on those slides and answering your questions through those slides. So let's get started. So we've had over 2,000, at least 2,000, maybe even closer to 2,500 at this point, of your questions that have been submitted over the last 72 hours. The questions are basically all dealing with 3 major themes. So we took all your questions, we read every single one, and we basically broke them up into 3 themes: testing and tracing, cleaning, masking, and distancing, and then instructional models. And we'll start this evening with instructional models like remote or hybrid. So we've been meeting with our emergency response team since the pandemic began in early March. And your feedback and your questions really help us and sort of drive not only our plan that we truly did submit, even though you may have heard differently today, but also it just helps us shape those plans as well as we try to again keep updating the drafts. But with that being said, the one caveat that I would add for this evening is I will attempt to answer any and all questions that you may have, and if I don't have the answer, I'll refer to one of our experts also on this meeting. But we receive guidance from Dr. Mendoza and the County Department of Health, as well as the New York State Department of Health, almost every day. So some of the answers I may give tonight could change before our kids come to school on September 10th, but they will change because of Department of Health guidance. And if they do, we'll try to make sure that we tell you about those changes. So for today, we're going to have 5 guidelines. First, we are recording this session. We will record all 6 meetings. The first 3 are already on our website. So just in case that you missed something tonight, or you wanted to go through and listen to some of the answers again, that's okay. You just go right to the website and download or watch on YouTube these meetings. Again, we used your questions to design all of our slides, right? We're going to use the raise the hand feature through Zoom, and that's how we can recognize that you have a question. We won't be able to get through all of your questions tonight when you raise your hand, but don't worry, because as soon as we're done, we're going to send you a feedback form. You can write your questions on that form, and we'll try to answer them either in person or on our FAQ. And if that doesn't work, you're going to email me directly, and I'll try to answer you within 24 hours. Reminder, and all of us have probably been on Zoom so much in the last 6 months that we're all sick of it, but keep yourselves muted unless you have been recognized to ask a question. And the last one is probably the most important one, and that is we're all basically feeling the same way. We're stressed, we're fatigued, we're frustrated, we're anxious, and whether you're a parent, a teacher, a superintendent, it doesn't really matter. We're sort of all going through and sharing these same emotions, but I also know that we're all trying our best. You're trying to be the best parent you can be. I'm trying to be the best superintendent I can be. So you may hear answers tonight that you may not like, or you may hear somebody offer an opinion that you are diametrically opposed to. However, that's okay. We're all sort of still going through the same types of things. We're all trying our best. And just remember that kindness goes a long way. So with that being said, let's start off. So from the district tonight, I'm Carmen, I'm the superintendent. Brian Neenan is also on this meeting. He is the deputy superintendent. From operations, we have Brian Freeman, who's our Chief Financial Officer, Blaine Cunningham, who is our Director of Buildings and Grounds. And for instruction, we have Colleen Armstrong. She is our expert on special education and student services. Erin Land, who is actually running the show tonight. She is our Director of Elementary Ed. From Human Resources, we have Dave Swinson. He's our Assistant Superintendent. So if there's any personnel questions that come up, he's the person to ask. And if you feel inspired, you can become a bus driver and he can make that happen too. From Building Administration, we have Martha End, Principal of Clem South, Brian Powers, Principal at Willink, and Glenn Weedor, Principal at Thomas High School. And finally, for all of our technology questions, we have our co-directors of Instructional Tech, Brian Zimmer and Joe Montemero. So let's get started with our very first theme, which is going to be instructional models. So we're going to start with the remote option. 100% remote. Child never steps foot in a building. So they're in remote school. And their devices, they're going to get a device from school, and they'll have that device with a charging cord. The daily attendance is required. They're still in school, so we expect them to attend their classes. They're going to have grades, they're going to have assignments. So it's just like school, but they're doing it from home. IEP programs and services, we follow the IEP. We have a plan for all their services. We have a plan for their special eds, delivery, OT, PT, whatever it's going to be. I will have Colleen talk about that in a moment, Colleen Armstrong. We're asking that you're going to opt into this remote model for one semester at a time. So from now through January, through the end of January. Now, why do we do that? It's because if we have a bunch of remote students that come back to hybrid, come back to in-person, we've already staffed our in-person to make sure that we have enough kids or students, the class sizes, to make sure that we can still maintain a 6-foot distance. If all of a sudden there's a huge influx of students from the remote option that come in, it will be very hard for us to still maintain that 6-foot rule. Now, going the other way from hybrid to remote is easier, right? Because there's no 6-foot requirement for remote learning. So it's okay for us to have, students go from hybrid to remote, although it can be tricky if you're an in-person student with lots of services to get those services sort of lined up in the remote model. It's not impossible, but it might just take a little bit, a little while for us to get all that sorted out. Mrs. Armstrong, can you just touch briefly on the IEP programs and services?
Thank you, Colin. Two of our biggest questions from families were, where we get our services, what will they look like, and can we get evaluations? So I'll do evaluations first, absolutely. We are back in the swing of doing that. We have a health and safety protocol to follow, and building teams will be contacting you to continue that process. And for our students who choose the remote option, it will look different from the spring when it was our emergency closure. We'll have a schedule. We'll be following the IEP. So for example, if you have speech twice a week for 30 minutes, that'll be scheduled for you and you know when that will occur. Each person's plan is individual. So if you have any questions, either the building team, we can contact our office and we'd be happy to follow up and answer those.
Great. Thanks, Colleen. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So what does the remote learning option look like specifically at the elementary level? So for those students in K-5 who opt for remote, they will be assigned either an AM session or a PM session. And they will have a teacher for the AM or the PM, a live teacher that they meet with every day. And every day it'll be approximately 2 hours, and they'll go through 3 learning blocks: ELA, math, and social emotional learning. So like morning meeting, making those connections, the care attributes as well. Now the opposite half of that day, most of their learning will be asynchronous. It'll be on demand. So they may be able to pull down the latest art or music lesson that will be taught by our own teachers. It may not be live, but it will be a lesson that was probably just recorded a day or so prior. They can pull down typing modules, reading, social studies, maybe some assignments from the teacher. So our goal was to have it so that every day a student sees a teacher live, even though it's on the screen. And then they also have a blend of the independent work time and again, those asynchronous on-demand learning opportunities. Now, at the secondary level, it's going to look a little bit different. At the secondary level, every student that we have, no matter what model they choose, every secondary student is going to have an 8-period day. So it's that traditional 8-period schedule that most of us probably went to high school with. So the periods are 40 to 44 minutes long. And on odd calendar days, like September 13th, September 15th, September 17th, you get the idea. On those odd days, they will have that full 40 to 44 minute block live with their teacher, okay, using Google Meet during periods 1, 3, 5, and 7. So odd calendar day, you meet your odd period teachers. Even calendar day, you meet your even period teachers. So now what are they doing the off periods? Well, the off periods are still opportunities where they can check in with those teachers during those blocks, but that attendance is most likely not mandatory. It can be depending on the class, but most likely it's for some extra help. It's for a question that they may have had on a homework assignment. And I say that most likely the off periods won't be mandatory, but that being said, I used to be a science teacher, and I could see myself saying to some of my classes, listen, I know today is your off day. I mean, you have me during block 2, but today's an odd calendar day, but I still want you to show up during block 2 because we have to finish the lab. So it will be a mandatory session. But for the most part, our students would be live streaming with teachers half the day, and the other half of the day maybe checking in. But again, every day they're going to have some live classes, some independent work time, and because it's an 8-period day and they're just following their schedule, there's also that opportunity. They're going to have a lunch break, and they're going to probably have a study hall break too. So why do we do it this way? It was really to make sure that they weren't Zooming straight or Google Meeting straight for 6.5 hours, because it's not good for kids and it's not good for the adults either. You get Zoom fatigue pretty fast. So that's secondary. So that's through the remote options for elementary and secondary. So let's talk about the in-person hybrid model. At the elementary level, the blocks of time are still the same as what I just described. There's either an AM, you will be assigned either the AM block or the PM block, and I think all of you got your assignments last week. 2 hours a day, ELA, math, social emotional learning. So one of the questions that a lot of people had was, well, wait a minute, it's only 2 hours a day, that's not a half a day. And you're right, it's not. Our typical half day forever has been 2.5 hours. But we know that when we start off in September, we know that there's going to be a ton of families dropping off and picking up their children with their cars. They're going to provide their own transportation. According to the survey that everyone is filling out, I think almost 5,500 of you, 44% of the families say we don't need transportation. So we know for the elementary bus loops, we have to extend arrival time and we have to extend the dismissal time. So that's why it's only 2 hours. We do think that as we get more efficient, and we're going to be giving everyone an app called Pick My Kids, right, Ms. Land? Okay, Pick My Kids. And we do think that we're going to be able to get more efficient so that 2 hours may very well become 2:10, 2:15, 2:20. We probably won't get to 2:30, but we'll try as best we can. So then what happens after or during the off time? So they see their teacher live every day, in person, 2 hours. Then what happens after that? Again, it's similar to the remote model. there's going to be some on-demand asynchronous learning, typing, social studies, assignments from the teacher, RAS kids for reading and such. Now, art and music is also in there. Now, this is a little bit different than the remote because art and music, most likely for our hybrid in-person children, art and music will be virtual. And it most likely will be synchronous. I mean, I do think that there will be some live art and music classes, but don't worry if your children can't make it at that particular time because you're at work and they're at daycare and the daycare doesn't have Wi-Fi, because you'll be able to pull it down from the cloud or from YouTube later on that evening or the next day or whatever you need to do. So every day, elementary students are going to have a blend of live in-person class time, independent work time, and then obviously they'll have lunch and breaks. So our kids still will get grab and go meals. If you need breakfast or lunch, we do offer that still, but it's grab and go. We're not using the cafeteria. So that's hybrid for elementary. Hybrid for secondary. Our secondary students will have full live classes 2 days a week, Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. On Wednesdays across the county, are remote days. So our kids they're going to have all 8 of their classes, just like they did on Monday and Thursday, but the classes will be remote with their teacher, and there'll be mini classes. They'll be 25 minutes long. I'll show you the schedule in the next slide. So why did we choose Monday, Thursday, and Tuesday, Friday? The goal was not to have more than 48 hours or so, 48 to 72 hours for a student. We didn't want the students to be away from their teacher for more than 48 hours, basically. So this way, they're live for a couple days, and then that remote piece on Wednesday, so they're still seeing the eyes of their teacher. And we thought that was really important to do that. The 2 days that they are totally remote, that is the independent work days. Those are days where they're working on assignments. They could be pulling down asynchronous blocks or asynchronous videos that their teachers are preparing as well. So again, it's that blend of live learning, the remote check-in for the mini classes, and then that independent learning as well. The next slide shows you the schedules for middle school and high school. Those are on your left. So 8:45 start, 3:15 ending, 40 to 44 minutes long. And then the right-hand side shows you the Wednesday calendar or the Wednesday schedule, beginning at 11, ending at 2:55. So in the morning, the teachers are really working together within their teams in order to sort of plan for the next week's instruction or the next month's instruction, and also planning for those asynchronous times when the kids are totally remote. So they're trying to plan for those modules or those activities. So I think, right? Okay, so that's the last slide for this theme. So now we're gonna open it up to you. So use your raise your hand function and we'll answer some questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes about this theme on instruction.
David is up first.
Do the schedules for kids with like autism or special needs differ from the schedule here? I had a little trouble hearing Colleen when she was speaking.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm having a little trouble with my microphone. I hope this is a little better. It really depends on what is on the student's IEP, what their schedule will be. There are some classrooms for students in our special class programs that will come every day. That would be the main difference. But otherwise, whether you're hybrid or remote, then we would follow those programs and services.
Okay, thank you, David. Next question.
Katie Wisek.
Hi, Katie.
I unmuted myself. Yes, I did. Will he again?
Can't hear you, Katie.
Are you able to hear me?
No, not really.
Did I type it in the chat?
We don't have a chat available for this one. Katie, you know what? Email me. Email
Okay.
me right now, and I'll try to answer it like at some point tonight. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Christine Roskis S is next.
Thank you. Good evening. We're new parents to the Webster School District, and I have not been able to reach the survey. Is there another alternative for us to complete that fill-in for our son who will be entering second grade?
Yes.
Christine, I'm going to email you tonight, okay?
Great. Thank you, Erin.
Yep.
Thanks, Christine. Welcome to Webster.
Thank you.
Dr. Stephanie Spain is next.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Spain.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm wondering if you have any ideas about class sizes for remote. So, for example, you said students can move from hybrid to remote. And for those of us who've chosen remote, are there caps in that so that the students get the learning that they need?
Yes. So we're expecting the class sizes really to be about the same as they are even for hybrid. So am I right, Aaron and Brian? They'll probably be between, let's see, we expect between the average between 8 or 9 to 12 for in-person. And for the elementary piece, because again, we're still dividing them up into AM and PM, we'd expect something maybe mid-teens for that. Aaron, am I accurate for that? It all depends, Dr. Spain, in terms of how many people really choose remote. We expect about 11% of our families to choose remote. That's what the survey is telling us now. So if that is true, then most likely we'll see that mid-teens, low to mid-teens.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is from Matt Tweedle.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I was wondering if you could talk through the thought process as to, because the secondary school seems to be following a very similar model to a lot of other schools in the Monroe County area. And I was wondering what the thought process was as to why the elementary schools went with 2-hour days versus a similar model to that of the secondary school.
Sure. The most important piece for us was daily contact with the teacher. Especially at elementary level, and for the primary level, even more so. So K2, just having that daily schedule, that routine, and the ability to at least see their teacher every day, even if it's for 2 hours, and we do hope to extend that, to begin to build those bonds and those relationships and those connections. So that's what really drove us to that model. And we know we're for the most part, I think we're probably alone in that. But that was from talking with teachers, especially who certainly know the elementary realm. That was a piece that we kept hearing over and over again.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Angela Soblowski.
Hi, Angela.
Hi. So and I'm sorry if I missed this, but I'm just curious about the EMCC program and how that's going to work for my senior.
Yeah. So Angela, we just heard from EMCC, probably 24 to 48 hours ago, and they're going to follow our same hybrid model. So if your son or daughter is on a Monday, Thursday schedule with a Wednesday remote, they're going to basically do the same thing. So she'll go to EMCC Monday, Thursday, and do remote EMCC on Wednesday.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You bet.
S. D.
Two more, Mrs.
Maria.
Land.
S.
Two
D.
more.
Maria is next. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Clegg. I'm actually, all of the sessions were closed when I tried to register, so I came over to Sasha's house to do this. I wanted to know how, if at the middle school level, are they rotating classes or are the teachers rotating classes? Because 5 minutes seems like a very short period of time to ensure sanitization of everything between class periods. And also, how are you managing the locker situation, passing time, all of that? Because there have been a lot of questions on that. Sure. In both the news and with a lot of my friends. Like, that's a lot of kids in the hallway, and if the teacher—
Sarah, yep. So Sarah, we're going to answer those questions during our third theme. So in about 20 minutes, you'll get your answers. Okay? Last question, Ms. Land.
Sure. Heather Ferrante.
Hi, Heather.
There you go.
Am I okay? Hi guys. I just have a
Hi, Heather.
question. When we were talking about what modules would be covered in the elementary schools, I saw ELA, math, and social emotional blocks. Can you talk a little bit more about what would be included in those social emotional blocks? Like some of the specific things I'm wondering, are the kids going to be able to have recess? Will they be outside at all? Or is it really just going to be, they're going to be in the classrooms getting that, like the chunks done of like that core learning? What else would be included there?
Yep. So Heather, I'm going to answer the recess piece first, an outside piece, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Armstrong, or Ms. Land, to talk about the social emotional piece. So the recess part is really teacher directed. I would imagine that most teachers will probably still want to get outside for even if it's for 15 minutes, because it's just a lot can happen during recess in a good way. I mean, I do think recess is a wonderful learning tool, but it's, again, that would be teacher directed. In terms of the SEL, Aaron or Colleen, you guys?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Go ahead, Ms. Armstrong.
Thanks, Carm. Yeah, so we use morning meeting at the elementary level. So it's a time for our teacher and our students to start to build those relationships and learn those essential skills of, resilience, self-management, taking turns, sharing, being a good friend, being kind, all those things. So that's what we talk about in the social emotional time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Heather. All right, so we're going to transition to the second theme. And the second theme is all about testing and screening and contact tracing. And this is where the number one question from parents happened. It's during this theme. The number one question is what happens with a positive test, which is going to be on a second slide. So this theme is only 2 slides long. And the second slide is all about, okay, we have a positive test, now what? But we're gonna work our way up to that positive test because a lot happens before a child is tested and before we get that test result back. So first, let's start with what's happening at home before they even step into, or they get on the bus, or they get into your car, all right? So every single student and every single employee has to fill out a health screening at home. That includes a temperature scan. And then all parents will attest that they've done it with their child. They've taken their temperature, there's no fever, and there's no symptoms. Okay? And they'll send it. We have this app, again, it's called Pick My Kids. It's the same app we're going to be using for arrival and dismissal. And that sends it off to us. Now, let's just say that you're like me, who would forget to do this with my children at least once a week. So we're going to know that. We're going to know the students that don't have theirs completed, and we'll be able to scan, to spot scan them with a thermometer. So that's not going to be an issue. But we can't temperature scan every child every day. It would just eat way too much into our instructional day. So we have that. So then the other questions were, well, is testing mandatory? Are we going to have to get all of our students tested like some colleges are doing? Are all employees going to get tested? Is the school actually going to do testing on site? So the answer to both those questions right now is no. There's no mandatory testing, and schools will not be doing testing. I can't even imagine schools doing testing in any scenario, but right now testing is not mandatory. Why? It's because we don't have enough stuff as a nation and as a region right now. We don't have enough reagents for all of us to get tested. And CDC and our DOH all say, don't test everyone. Only test the people that need to be tested. So it's those people that have been exposed, those people that are symptomatic, and those people that are going in for a medical procedure. Now, what happens if a student falls ill during school? So they come in and they spike a fever, maybe an hour into the class. Okay? Or they start coughing, or whatever, okay? They have a symptom. And so think about this. Most likely, they don't have COVID, all right? I mean, our infection rate right now in our region is below 1%. So they probably have something else. And most of us are going to have a cold by the end of September. That is the way it works. My wedding anniversary is on October 1st. For 32 years, I have never been healthy on my anniversary because I'm always sick because it's the 4th week after school starts. And I always have my first cold. The difference this year will be I won't come to school if I have any kind of symptom. So, but we understand that many times just because someone is showing symptoms, they may not have COVID. However, if they're showing symptoms, anything during a class time, the nurse will be called. The nurse will do a triage, most likely over the telephone with the teacher. The child comes down and goes into a supervised illness room. It's like like an isolation room, but it's supervised. There's going to be an adult in there. And most likely the parents will be notified depending on the symptoms. And I say that because I used to be a principal at State Road. And I just remember if a child comes in from recess and they've been running and running and running, and then they start coughing, that's not really a symptom. That's just them just, going crazy outside. And they're all red and flushed. And it's like, well, yeah, but just give them 10 minutes and they'll be fine. But most likely, so let's just say parents are notified. Parents come and pick up their child. And then this is where the partnership between parent, pediatrician, and district starts to happen. So then mom and dad call the doctor. The doctor's going to say, tell me about the symptoms. You may get a telemedicine appointment. And at that point, they'll say, you know what? Either get tested or let's wait another day. Let's see what happens to the symptoms. And they may not ask for a test. Okay? But let's just say that they ask for a test. But at that moment, they're determining really the timeline for the return to school, right? So and again, they may say, you know what, we want you to wait, 2 days, 3 days before you go back, and then they'll give you a note and go that way. But let's just say that your child is tested and that we have a positive test. So once there's a positive test, the Department of Health takes the lead. They notify the district, most likely within an hour of that test result coming in. And they notify us because even though we don't do the contact tracing, we're still an integral part of the contact tracing because we have to tell them who else is in the class, who may have been exposed, and so on. The contact tracers are really the people that determine, okay, who is truly exposed? And by exposure, Dr. Mendoza has sort of made every superintendent an expert on the definition of exposure, okay? Because he has sort of drilled this into our heads over the last 3 or 4 months. Exposure means that you have been in contact with a person for more than 10 minutes, closer than 6 feet, without a mask. That's exposure. So the contact tracer may very well say, okay, you know what? These students in this elementary class, they were all exposed. Okay? Even though they all had their masks on, but you know what? We're not going to take a chance with that. But we're going to quarantine everybody. But the class next door may not have been exposed because they never came into contact. The kids that may pass in the hallway, they're not really exposed because they're not more than 10 minutes without a mask and and less than 6 feet. But they drive who is isolated and for how long. And most likely it's for 14 days. Now, when they notify us, the Department of Health will basically notify the community of which school had a positive test, right? Or the district will notify everybody. But we can't actually share names for obvious reasons, right? Because of HIPAA and privacy laws. So the questions that normally have followed after we've described what happens with a positive test and contact tracing have been, well, what's going to shut us down? Will one positive test shut us down? I don't think it will, at least not according to what Dr. Mendoza is telling us now. But what will shut us down is if as a region we go above 9% positivity rates. Right now our positivity rate is like 0.8. So we're below 1%. But if we spike to 9% or more, we are automatically, as a region, shut down. We all go remote. So, and that's from Governor Cuomo. So we have no choice in that. What's the other piece that might shut us down? The other scenario that might shut us down would really be a district decision. And that is that we have such a high absentee rate of teachers or bus drivers. And the rationale there is they may not have COVID, but they might be quarantined, or they might have that cold or that flu or bronchitis or whatever it is, and they're just not coming in. Typically, they would work through that, but for this year, no one's coming in. When you're sick, you're staying home. But if we get a really high absentee rate, I may actually, instead of calling a snow day, I may have to call a COVID day. And that's where we're all remote, and it might last a week or so. So what can get us back to normal? What can have us back full on, in person, 5 days a week? There's one way, and there's only one way that we come all the way back. And that is if the 6-foot rule goes away. The 6-foot distancing rule, if that goes away, we can all come back. So what makes the 6-foot rule go away? Well, 2 things. One, our infection rate goes to almost 0, like New Zealand. I don't think that's going to happen. Right? It's just not the natural progression of science. That's not how viruses work. At least not for not for our area right now. So what's the other thing that can make our infection rate or make the 6-foot distance go away? The vaccine. So when we get a vaccine, and if like 75 or 80% of us get vaccinated, then we'll have herd immunity and our 6-foot requirement goes away. And that's what brings us back. So this is where I become really unpopular, because we're going to start off this year as hybrid. Do I see us coming back full on in person this school year in 2021? No, I don't. I see us hybrid for the rest of the year. Unless we get a great surprise with the vaccine by Thanksgiving and all the distribution of the vaccine in like 2 or 3 months, then maybe we can come back for April or March. Is that probable? I don't think it is. The vaccine is definitely going to happen. I'm really confident on that, but it's the distribution of the vaccine. So anyway, so I'd rather just totally be honest with you. That's why we keep calling this the bridge year, because I do think a year from now, we're going to be in a much better position. But for this school year, I think we're going to be hybrid for most of the year, if not all of the year. So that's the end of this theme. We only had 2 slides. So go ahead, do your raise your hand feature, and we'll answer some questions.
Gina Shevchuk.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, thank you. On the what can shut us down, is there a certain number of cases within a particular school that can shut us down?
So great question, Gina. I don't have the answer to that. I would actually, the DOH would really be the driver for us. And like in terms of how many people had to be quarantined and how many people have to be in isolation. So I don't have an answer. I don't think it's 1, but is it 2? Is it 5? I think it's probably, I'm going to take a wild guess. I was going to say it's 4 or 5. But again, the DOH would drive that decision for me.
Thanks.
You bet. Next.
Brian Marath.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, sorry. I had a question about, so if you have a child who's sick, not with COVID, how do you handle sick days? As if they're doing, would they be expected to do remote learning while they're home sick, or does it depend on the severity of what they have?
Yeah, so great question. This sick days for a child who's in in-person school, like if the child on hybrid, will be just like a typical year, right? You'd work with their current teacher, and you'd make up some work, or they'd help you with whatever needs to be done. We won't take a child who's sick and put them into the 100% remote school, because it's like changing schools. And typically we're not going to take a child who's sick and just have them change schools. So for the most part, it would just be, you know what, you're going to work with your in-person teacher, and we'll get you through your illness. A great question.
Thank you.
Diane's iPhone is up next.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, I had the same question, so you answered.
Okay. Thanks, Di.
And Carm, you had a question emailed to you as well, I think. So we don't want to forget about that.
Oh, okay.
Colleen Cross is up next.
Okay.
Hi, my question is just a little bit about transportation, and I just want to know kind of where are we with that. I have a daughter starting 6th grade at Willink, so she's going to be getting on the bus kind of at a new stop, and I know this year she would have kind of had a group of kids to walk to the bus stop with, and now we have less of those kind of buddy walkers.
Right.
Are 6th graders at the bus stops going to be closer to maybe her house, or other people are on the same day? Or I'm just a little concerned about the on and off and not having as many neighborhood buddies to be in a group with.
Gotcha. Colleen, we're still working on the routing. And Mr. Freeman could probably answer this a little bit better than I could. I have a feeling that the stops will be about the same as last year, like in terms of like how far they're walking. Obviously, there's going to be probably only, and we're going to get to this in the next theme, but there's only going to be like 25% of our kids actually taking the bus. So it's going to be very sparse. But yeah, go ahead.
We're a little bit behind on that routing this year, obviously, because we're waiting to see who is actually hard numbers to participate in transportation, looking for possible, clusters or spikes, maybe a whole 2-3 bus stops in one neighborhood, or all of a sudden driving, that then we have to mix up that route. So there is going to be some nuances going around. Generally, we're feeling like they're going to stay the same from some of the early indications we have from parents that are not going to opt in for transportation. But, that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks once we have the firm data of who won't be transporting.
Thanks, Colleen. So Katie's question that she just emailed me was, are the AM and PM times for the 100% remote, are they the exact same as the in-person hybrid? Katie, I think they will be. They'll be darn close to it. I don't know if they'll be minute to minute, but they'll be darn close to it. Okay. Aaron, is that correct? Okay, great.
That is correct, yep.
All right, 2 more, Aaron, if we have them.
Sure, Kelly Lape is next.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi. My question is, let's say the child's at school on a Thursday and they come down with some symptoms. So they go down to the nurse. The parent does come pick them up. They decide that they should get a COVID test based on their symptoms. They find out over the weekend that they're negative, but they still have a little bit of a fever, or well, I guess not a fever because you wouldn't come to school, but a cough or something like that. Do they still need to stay home until they're completely symptom free, or how does that work?
Yeah, so Kelly, that's a great question. And the pediatricians in our area are trying to work together to come up with a really cool flow chart. And we got the first draft of one the other day, I think it was yesterday. And I don't know if it's the final draft yet. But yeah, the doctors are really trying to let parents know symptom-free is symptom-free. So yeah, you may end up holding your child at home for an extra day or 2, more so than you would normally.
Okay.
That's really hard on parents, but that's a great question, Kelly. That's a really
Thank you.
Okay. Last question, Aaron.
Sure, Kristen Linderman.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi. Quick question about transportation. Is childcare, being picked up at childcare, still an option?
Go ahead, Brian. Yes.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
Okay, cool.
Where you fill out the child care form like any other year, and that's where transportation will get your child.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so let's go to our last theme. The last theme is cleaning, distancing, masking. We're going to break this up into really 4 parts. We're going to talk about the bus. We're going to talk about the elementary classroom, a secondary classroom, and then we're going to talk about ventilation as well. So on the bus, I know it says 50% reduced capacity. I actually think it's going to be closer to 25 to 30%. And why is that? It's because we're only transporting at most half our kids anyway, because that's why we're on a hybrid model. Of those half, nearly half of the parents on the survey are saying that they're not, that their kids don't need transportation on the bus. So we do expect our ridership on the bus to be minimal. So that's going to allow us to really have one child per seat. Siblings can sit together. It also allows, we're going to be able to hit all the high contact areas in between bus trips. And then at the end of the day, the bus will be thoroughly cleaned. Hand sanitizer, you can send your kid in with as much hand sanitizer as you want. We have hand sanitizer as well from the state. We can't have that on the bus for a variety of reasons. And then others have asked about plexiglass. Can you put plexiglass on the bus or in the classroom? We can't use plexiglass. No school can, because plexiglass is flammable. And you can't have that on the bus or in a classroom. And we also have to be careful on the bus that whatever we have can't obstruct the driver's view. So, but we should be okay, because I expect maybe 15 to 23 kids per bus. So it'll be almost like a ghost town is what we're thinking about now. So that's the bus. What about an elementary classroom? So we're looking at an average class size, 8 to 13. I think 13 is a high number. 8 is probably pretty low, but in that range. Remember, the kids are only there for 2 hours. So most likely they're going to have their masks on the entire time if they're inside, because the teacher will basically say, listen, I can't guarantee that you're always going to be 6 feet apart. You may be 6 feet apart right now, but when you get up and you go to the bathroom, or you get up and you go to your cubby, then you're going to be passing other students. So the masks will most likely be on at all times during those 2 hours. Now, that being said, there might be an opportunity for kids to go outside and they're really far apart, and maybe they're reading under trees or whatever they are, and the teacher says, all right, for the next 10 minutes, read your book. We're all 8 feet apart. You can take off your mask and take a break. So that could happen. Now, the high contact areas in the building will be hit multiple times during the day. The room itself, the classroom itself, will be disinfected, will be cleaned or sanitized in between the AM and the PM session. And we're going to do that with all hands on deck, meaning all of us are going to get trained, in terms of I think it's going to be a red spray bottle. I don't know, but whatever. We're going to be using a certain cleaning solution, which we're going to describe in detail in a second. But I'll be getting trained. Ms. Land will be getting trained, and we're going to elementary buildings in between AM and PM, and we're going to help clean. So it is all hands on deck. The cleaner solution that we use is hydrogen peroxide based, and we're going to describe that in detail in about 10 seconds. And that's like the safest thing we can use. It's awesome. It's good stuff. And then obviously the building, after the kids all leave, the building has its pretty thorough cleaning every evening. So, Mr. Cunningham, can you talk to us about the cleaning solution?
Certainly, thanks, Carm. Glad to report that the district has plenty of Diversity Oxivir TB in stock. Know that this product the district has been using for several years now as part of our bloodborne pathogen program. In regards to COVID disinfecting, it does have a 1-minute kill claim on surfaces. And the best thing about it, it has for the material safety data sheet, the HMIS rating has a 0 safety rating, 0 fire rating, and a 0 combustible rating. That being said, 4 is the highest or the worst, and 0 is the best you can be. So I think the district is in a good place with the type of disinfectant that it picked, and it is on the CDC list to kill, like I said, the COVID pandemic within 1 minute.
Great. Thanks, Blaine. Okay, so that's the elementary classroom. Secondary classroom, again, average class size, 8 to 13. We have some really big rooms, especially in some tech rooms. We might have a couple more students other than those 13, but the rooms are so large they can still be 6 feet apart. So, but their masks are on for the most part at all times. Discretion of the teacher. If the teacher knows that they're in this huge room and there's only 5 kids, they can spread out hither and yon and take off their mask and take a small break. But I haven't met a teacher yet that is basically really excited about mask breaks. I think most teachers are like, listen, it's 40 minutes long. They're going to have their mask on. High contact areas are hit throughout the day. Desktops will be wiped down in between classes. Again, all hands on deck using that hydrogen peroxide solution that Blaine just described. And then thorough cleaning at the end of the day. Now, I forget who it was. There was somebody asked about lockers and walking in the hallways, and probably we could talk about cafeterias here as well. I remember she was over at Sasha's house, that I do know. So there is limited use of lockers. Okay, so that means we're going to ask our secondary students to only go to their lockers 3 times a day: beginning of the day, end of the day, and at lunchtime. This is a big change for middle school students because they tend to go to their lockers after almost every period. High school students, the majority of them do not use their lockers anyway, so this is not a huge change for them, but certainly it is for middle schoolers. But we'll be able to limit that use of their lockers. And in terms of walking in the hallways, they are, first of all, we only have half our students in the building at any one time. So that's good. So the congestion is down. We will have some signage that will help the students know, okay, you're on the right-hand side. You're sticking to the right-hand side, and that's how you're walking. And we'll remind them about the 6-foot rule, but I'm also a realist. And I know middle school boys do not like to be 6 feet apart. So we know that there's going to be constant reminders around that 6-foot rule, especially in the hallways. But we have the laws of exposure on our side. Remember what Dr. Mendoza says: exposure is more than 10 minutes without a mask, less than 6 feet apart. So in the hallways, I understand we're less than 6 feet apart, but they will be masked and they will not be together for more than 10 minutes in that hallway. So we'd have that going for us. In terms of the cafeteria, in the elementary schools, we're not using the cafeteria because we're not serving lunch like in a typical day. At the middle schools, luckily, Spry will have their brand new cafetorium, which is huge, same size actually as Willink. And there will be 8 lunch periods this year instead of 6. So the 8 lunch periods will help us have even smaller groups. So we're not going to have a problem with the 6-foot piece. The issue will be, again, I'm thinking middle school and high school, kids like to socialize. So we're just going to have to make sure that there are ways that they can socialize and still be distanced from each other. At the high schools, Schrader's cafeteria is pretty large, so probably no issues there. And at Thomas High School, and Mr. Weedor is on the line here, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. At Thomas, they're going to be using different areas. They have 2 small cafeterias. They have some other areas that they can eat as well. But we should be able to, again, still distance the kids as they eat their lunch. And is that the last? No, ventilation. So let's move on to the last slide of the evening. Ventilation. So again, I'm going to turn this over to Blaine in a second, but the one great thing about schools is that our HVA systems are designed for airflow and they're not designed for comfort. All right, so they're designed to exchange the air from outside to inside. So drawing in outside air and refreshing the inside air in the classroom. And we tend to do that refreshment or that refreshing 4 to 12 times per hour. So approximately like every 8 minutes in your typical space, we're getting a new batch of air. So I'm going to turn it over to Blaine so we can describe the filters that we have as well.
Okay, thanks, Carm. If you recall, Governor Cuomo stated a couple weeks ago that if the malls could open, they could go to a MERV 15 filter. As a school district, because the way our systems work with bringing in so much outside air, our systems aren't able to handle those thick media filters like that. We have a MERV 8 filter for our rating. Part of our Tools for Schools program several years ago, we selected a Camfil FAR filter. That is a pleated MERV 8 filter. But what this filter does, it allows that fresh air and the other air to come in to the rooms and refresh that, as Carm said, approximately 4 to 12 times per hour. Our district univents and air handlers do not stop like a home furnace. When the temperature in that space is satisfied, those fans will shut off. That is not the case in our school district, where those fans run constantly. Speaking of constantly, the district also has an energy management system. Through that energy management system, that we can track the amount of outside air that is coming in through the information we get from our dampers. We can track set point. So if we would have a failure with one of our HVAC units, that system sends out alarms to our HVAC specialists at desktops. It can also do our laptops and cell phones after hours.
Thanks, Blaine. That's the last slide for this theme. So we'll open it up to you to raise your hand and ask a question.
Our first question is from the screen name Galaxy A20.
Hi, Galaxy. They probably don't even, they may not know their screen name.
Hi, this is Crystal. Can you hear me?
Hi, Crystal.
Hi. This is my first year going to Willink for my son. My question is, I understand that you said that there's no plexiglass in the classrooms. I want to know, how will the setting be in the classroom, far as the student desks? Is it the regular school regular desk, or is it a round desk? Will the desks be 6 feet apart?
So great question. Most of the desks, most of the furniture in Willink, is Mr. Powers on? Mr. Powers? Mr. Powers is your child's principal. So
okay.
I'll have him answer this question, but most of the furniture in Willink are traditional desks.
Okay.
So the kids will be definitely seated 6 feet apart. Now there might be, the desk may not be 6 feet apart, because there might be desks that are unused, like different, like a row that's unused. But Mr. Powers, if you're online, or sorry, if you're here and you can hear me, if you can chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Carmen, and great question. Yeah, I can tell you that almost all of our classrooms are full of a standard desk. There are some rooms, like our science classrooms, which have tables, and we are working in those rooms in particular, and with the square footage that we have, to make those accommodations. But in most classrooms with the standard desks, we're moving them to the edges and creating that 36 square feet of space, and we're even looking to, when possible, remove the extra desks that aren't needed.
Great. Thank you. Great question.
Next question is, thank you. Next question is from Jason Majak.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, it's actually his wife.
Oh, hi.
Hi, I'm Cassandra. So
Hi,
I
Cassandra.
just had a question regarding orchestra, because we're having to figure out what to do with our viola from last year. So are we re-renting? Are we still doing lessons kind of in the Zoom format?
Great question. They'll definitely be able to play the viola. So definitely rent it again. And I think with string instruments, I think it's going to be easier to have in-person lessons. All right.
Okay.
Band instruments a little bit tougher because they're blowing into them, right? And they need 12 feet instead of just 6. But we are still working on what music is going to look like for secondary schools. But we are going to have, live music classes. They're going to look definitely different. But yeah, definitely rent that viola again. Okay.
He'll be so excited. Thank you.
Yes.
Next question is from Dina Bonke.
Hi, Dina.
Hi. My daughter is going to be a senior. She will be going to school every day. She does go to EMCC, though this year she took small animal care, and she would kind of be going like on a placement to a vet's or cat care. Do you have any idea what that's going to be like?
I don't for that specific program, but I know EMCC is still going to, I mean, they're still operating. Most likely they're going to follow our schedule. So if your daughter's on a Monday, Thursday cohort, she'll be going to EMCC Monday, Thursday, and probably doing 1 day of remote. But in terms of the internship with the vet, I don't know how that's going to work.
Okay, is there anybody like I could be in contact with that would maybe know?
At this point, let's see.
Wait it out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. You may want to contact first your child's high school principal, either Mr. Weedor or Mr. Benz, because they may have a contact at EMCC that might be able to help.
Okay, or I'm even in contact with her teacher from last year.
Okay, that's even better. That's even better.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Dina.
Next question is from L. Walrath.
Okay.
Hi, this is Lance.
Hi, Lance.
Hi, I just had a quick question. So if this is kind of pertaining to masks and stuff. So
okay.
So your son or daughter, they have their mask or whatever. If for some reason something you lose a mask or something happens where I'm kind of confused. Like if people are like even they're walking and people are students want to just take off their mask because they want to be cool or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
People they're going to be like a hall monitor or anything like that. Just kind of
yeah.
Out.
Excellent question. First of all, if they lose their mask, we have lots of them, so they'll be able to get one from us. That's it's almost like losing a pencil.
Yeah.
And kids are going to be kids. They are going to test this, and we'll be constantly reminding them, you guys, you have to have the mask on. That's a directive. We're asking you to do something. You have to do it. And there's not a lot of leeway here, all right? Because it impacts the health of others, right?
Right.
And so if it continues to be a problem, we will deal with that student and mom and dad and bring them in and try to have them make a better choice. And if they still continue to refuse, or if mom and dad refuse, then probably in-person learning is not the best site for them. So remote is probably the better piece to go, so they can not wear a mask in their bedroom. So that's fine with me. But when they're in our buildings, they're going to be wearing a mask. When they're on the bus, they're going to be wearing a mask. We're not going to fight the science on this. Okay, so, and I know the vast majority of people understand, I think, my position and the position of almost every teacher and administrator. But yeah, so we'll definitely, we don't want to get into a conflict cycle with our kids, but we just want to let them know, listen, here's the deal. When you do this, you're being respectful and you're helping us stay safe. And I think most kids will respond to that.
What about like the classes, just the classes like drama, science Olympiad, that kind of stuff? I know we've never really talked about that, but are those after school kind of programs? Are they the after school programs? Are they happening?
So, we're still in the midst of trying to figure that part out. I do think that many of those things can still happen. They may have to happen in a hybrid model. Like sometimes it's remote and sometimes it's in person. Drama and singing and chorus chorus is tough, man. I mean, it's we're not gonna be able to sing in a big chorus, not this year. All right. Unless we're outside and we're at the stadium and they're spread all out on the turf. But Science Olympiad, I think Science Olympiad, there's a way to do that. It's gonna take some creativity, but there's a way to do that remotely. Same thing with Math Lab, or not Math Lab, Math League and such. Yeah. But we'll get there. We may not start with it in September, but we'll get there. I know we will, because that's just as important for many of our students as are the AP courses that they're taking, or whatever it is, right? I mean, those extracurriculars are really important.
All right, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. You guys are doing it. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Lance. Thank you. One more, Mrs. Land.
Sure, Elizabeth Hanks.
Hey.
Hi, thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
What are the options for middle and high school band and chorus students who choose remote? And if we choose remote and extracurricular activities like marching band start again, will they be able to participate if they've chosen remote?
Okay, so band and chorus, we think can happen remotely. I don't know exactly how, but I do think that they're going to be able to happen remotely. Okay, so the music piece is really important to us. We know that no matter if you're in person or remote, the music piece is really important. So are the arts. So so we are going to find a way to make that happen. The marching band piece, I know we're still working. Their competitive season has been canceled. I don't see that coming back in the next 10 weeks. So, but it doesn't mean that marching band can't still do some type of section rehearsals, like all the trumpets. You guys know this better than I do, but all the trumpets, all the trombones, color guard, and they might have to do that remotely. But that shouldn't, just because you're remote doesn't preclude you from being part of those activities, because I think those activities are going to happen remotely anyway. So I think you'd be okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, it's 8:10. I want to be cognizant of your time. I want to say, first of all, don't worry if you didn't get your questions answered. We're going to send you a feedback form momentarily, so you'll be able to fill it out there. We'll try to answer it either in person or via our FAQ. And feel free to email me directly. You will get an answer either from me or from one of the experts that are on this call within 24 hours. And but the last thing I want to say is I thank you all for, number one, showing up on a Monday night during the summer. That says an awful lot about your advocacy for your children. And also just for your flexibility, your support of the district, your patience with all the stuff that's going on. Nobody asked to be part of a pandemic, but I think we're getting through this together. And I appreciate the fact that you understand all of the moving pieces that are involved in trying to get our students back at school, whether remotely or in person. So again, I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate all of you and all that you're doing for your children. So have a wonderful night. And again, thank you very much. Have a great night.